Have you ever been told something was God's way, only to wonder years later if it was simply someone's rule? I asked myself that question every morning after my first baby was born. My name is Regina. I was 24 years old, and I believed every Amish wife lived exactly the way I did. I thought every young mother cried when no one was looking. I thought every woman hid the same fear. I thought every baby brought the same strange tradition. I was wrong. I didn't learn the truth until another Amish mother whispered 6 words that changed everything. She looked at me and said, "They made you do it too?" I couldn't answer, because I had spent my whole life believing there was no other way. If you've ever wondered how ordinary people can mistake tradition for truth, stay with me. My story begins 3 days after my son Samuel entered this world. The snow had covered our farm through the night. Everything outside looked clean and peaceful. Inside our little farmhouse, nothing felt peaceful at all. Samuel was sleeping in the wooden cradle Daniel had built before he was born. Every few minutes I leaned over to make sure he was still breathing. New mothers worry about things no one else notices. At least I did. The room smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke. My mother had been helping since the birth. She moved quietly through the kitchen, keeping soup warm over the stove. She smiled every time she looked at the baby. She almost never looked at me. Not because she didn't love me, because in our community, once the baby arrived, people believed the mother should already be grateful. Pain was expected. Exhaustion was expected. Questions were not. Daniel came inside after feeding the horses. Snow rested on his black hat and shoulders. He bent over the cradle first. Only then did he kiss my forehead. "How is our little boy?" "Sleeping." "And you?" I hesitated. "I'm tired." He nodded. "You'll get stronger." I wanted to believe him. I truly did. That afternoon, our district midwife came to check on Samuel. Her name was Miriam. She had delivered more babies than anyone could count. She held Samuel carefully. She smiled. "He is healthy." Everyone relaxed. Healthy babies brought joy to every Amish home. Then she turned toward me. Her smile disappeared. "It's time." Just 2 words. "It's time." My stomach tightened. Mother quietly looked toward the floor. Daniel stepped outside without another word. No one explained anything. No one needed to. They all knew. Only I felt afraid. Have you ever noticed how silence can tell you exactly what is about to happen? I slowly stood. My body still ached from giving birth. Every step reminded me that I wasn't healed. Mother helped me pull on my coat. Outside, the cold air stung my face. The buggy waited near the gate. Daniel held the horse steady. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. I climbed inside beside Mother. No one spoke during the ride. The wheels rolled through fresh snow. Bare tree branches stretched across the gray sky. The fields looked empty, almost forgotten. I finally whispered, "Do I have to?" Mother answered without looking at me. "We all did." That wasn't really an answer. It was simply another way of ending the conversation. The buggy stopped outside the bishop's farmhouse. Several women were already there. Some carried babies wrapped in thick quilts. Others had older children holding their hands. I recognized almost everyone. Yet something felt different today. They weren't visiting. They were waiting. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and cinnamon. The older women greeted me kindly. But beneath their smiles, I sensed something else. Expectation. Like everyone already knew what I was about to do. An elderly woman named Sarah motioned for me to sit. She placed her wrinkled hand over mine. "You've become a mother." I nodded. She smiled softly. "Now you must prove you're ready to become a wife again." Those words confused me. I already was a wife. Hadn't I proven that? Before I could ask, another woman entered carrying a small wooden box. I had seen similar boxes before, never opened, never discussed. She placed it on the table. Every woman in the room became quiet. Sarah looked directly at me. "You know why you're here." I swallowed. I know what everyone says, but I don't know why. A few women exchanged nervous glances. One younger mother quickly looked away. An older woman cleared her throat. "We don't ask why. We obey." Again, the same answer. Always obedience. Never understanding. Sarah slowly opened the wooden box. Inside rested a neatly folded white apron, a tiny Bible, and a narrow strip of plain linen. Nothing more. Nothing that looked frightening. Yet my hands suddenly felt cold. Sarah lifted the apron. This belonged to my mother. Before that, her mother. It has been worn by every new mother in our family. She carefully handed it to me. Then she picked up the strip of linen. You will wear this for 40 days. I frowned. For what reason? No one answered. Instead, Sarah carefully tied the linen around my wrist. It wasn't tight. It wasn't painful. But something about it made me uneasy. I looked at Mother. She quietly nodded as if encouraging me not to resist. Then Sarah spoke the words I had heard whispered since childhood, but never understood. After every baby, a wife must remember her place before she returns to ordinary life. Remember her place. The word settled heavily inside me. Was becoming a mother supposed to make me smaller? Or stronger? No one explained. The women gathered around me. One by one they offered advice. Cook when you can. Rest only when the baby rests. Don't complain. Trust your husband. Pray more than you speak. Some of their advice felt comforting. Some sounded impossible. Then one woman quietly entered through the back door. She carried a sleeping baby girl against her shoulder. I had never met her before. She looked close to my age, maybe 25. She noticed the white linen tied around my wrist. Her face changed instantly. She walked straight toward me. The room became unusually still. She leaned close enough that only I could hear. They made you wear it too? I nodded slowly. She closed her eyes. Then she whispered, I buried 3 babies before someone finally told me. God never asked us to do this. The room fell completely silent. Every woman had heard her. No one denied what she said. No one agreed with her either. Sarah slowly stood. Her voice became firm. Enough. But the young mother didn't move. She looked directly into my eyes. And for the first time since Samuel was born, I realized the greatest fear inside that room wasn't breaking tradition. It was someone finally asking where that tradition had come from. That young mother's words stayed inside the room long after she stopped speaking. No one argued with her. No one comforted her. The silence felt heavier than any shouting ever could. Have you ever noticed that when people refuse to answer a question, sometimes that becomes the answer? I was beginning to understand that. Sarah looked at the young mother with tired eyes. You shouldn't have come today. The woman held her little girl a little closer. I almost didn't. But I couldn't watch another new mother leave here believing what I believed. Her voice never rose. She sounded calm, almost exhausted. Sarah folded the white apron and placed it back inside the wooden box. Regina has enough to think about. The young mother nodded. I know. That's why she deserves the truth. I looked from one woman to another. I don't even know your name. She gave me a small smile. Naomi. I'm from the church district 2 valleys east of yours. I had heard of that district. People said they followed the same ordnung we did, the same plain clothes, the same horse and buggy, the same church traditions. Then why did Naomi sound as though she had lived a completely different life? Mother gently touched my shoulder. It's time to go home. Before I could stand, I looked at Naomi. What did you mean? She glanced around the room. Every woman was watching. Not one of them interrupted. Finally, Naomi answered. I meant exactly what I said. I buried 3 babies before I learned the difference between God's commands and people's customs. A chill ran through me. 3 babies. I couldn't imagine carrying that much sorrow. Sarah quietly closed the wooden box. Those children were not lost because of this tradition. Naomi looked at her with kindness. I know. But I believed they were. The room became still again. No one seemed angry, only uncomfortable, as though an old wound had been uncovered. Mother gently guided me toward the door. Outside, the afternoon wind carried tiny pieces of snow across the yard. Daniel was waiting beside the buggy. He smiled when he saw Samuel sleeping peacefully. Then he noticed my face. What happened? Before I could answer, Mother spoke first. Nothing important. I looked at her. It had felt important to me. Daniel helped me into the buggy. The ride home felt longer than before. Samuel slept the entire way. I held him close beneath the warm quilt, his tiny fingers wrapped around one of mine. I whispered a prayer that he would always know love before fear. Halfway home, I finally asked Mother, "Did you wear the linen after I was born?" She nodded. "Yes." "Did Grandmother wear it?" "Yes." "And great-grandmother?" "So far back that no one remembers when it started." I looked down at the white strip around my wrist. "It doesn't tell me anything." Mother sighed. "It isn't supposed to." Her answer confused me even more. That evening, our farmhouse filled with neighbors bringing meals, fresh bread, chicken soup, apple butter, cheese. Everyone wanted to see Samuel. Women took turns rocking him. The men congratulated Daniel. Children smiled every time Samuel made the smallest sound. It should have been a happy evening. Instead, I couldn't stop looking at the linen around my wrist. Every few minutes, someone noticed it. Each time they smiled, no one explained why. After supper, my Aunt Lydia stayed behind to wash dishes with Mother. I stood beside the sink, drying plates. When Mother stepped into the pantry, Aunt Lydia quietly leaned toward me. "You're thinking about Naomi." I nodded. Everyone is pretending she never spoke. Lydia glanced toward the pantry door. "People often ignore things they cannot explain." "Do you believe her?" She rubbed the edge of the towel between her fingers. "I believe grief makes people ask difficult questions." "That isn't what I asked." She smiled sadly. "No, it isn't." Before she could say more, Mother returned. The conversation ended immediately. Another silence. Another unfinished answer. Late that night, Daniel and I finally found ourselves alone. Samuel had fallen asleep after feeding. Only the fire cracked softly in the stove. Daniel sat across from me repairing a leather harness. He always worked with his hands when something troubled him. I watched him for several minutes. Then I spoke. "Did your mother wear the linen?" He nodded without looking up. "Yes." "Do you know why?" His hands stopped moving. "I never asked." "Why not?" He shrugged. "It wasn't something men discussed." That surprised me. The women didn't explain it. The men didn't ask about it. Then who actually understood it? I untied the linen from my wrist, just enough to look beneath it. My skin carried a faint red mark. Nothing serious. Still, I wondered why I suddenly wanted it off. Daniel noticed. "You should leave it." "Why?" "Because that's what everyone does." I smiled sadly. "Do you hear yourself?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" I asked why. "You answered with what everyone else does." He looked down at the harness again. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, he admitted, "I truly don't know." His honesty comforted me more than certainty would have. At least he wasn't pretending. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Samuel began crying just as the rooster called from the barn. I wrapped him carefully in a soft quilt and carried him into the kitchen. The farmhouse felt peaceful. For the first time since his birth, I was alone. I warmed a little milk, rocked Samuel gently, watched snow fall beyond the window. Then I heard buggy wheels outside. No one was expected that early. I looked through the glass. It was Naomi. She climbed down carrying a woven basket. I hurried to open the door before anyone else woke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know this is early." "It's all right." She looked toward the staircase. "I can't stay long." She handed me the basket. Inside were homemade rolls, fresh butter, a tiny hand-stitched baby quilt, and beneath the quilt, an old leather-bound journal. I looked up. "What is this?" Naomi lowered her voice. "It belonged to my grandmother. She was an Amish midwife for almost 40 years. I carefully touched the worn cover. It isn't a diary. It's a record." "A record of what?" Naomi swallowed. "Every mother she cared for." My heart skipped. She looked directly into my eyes. "She wrote something about the tradition you're following." Something. She was told never to let anyone read. Before I could open the journal, I heard footsteps upstairs. Mother was awake. Naomi stepped backward toward her buggy. "Hide it. Read it when you're alone." Then she said one sentence that made my blood run cold. "If your name is already written in that journal, someone expected this conversation long before your baby was ever born." She climbed into the buggy and disappeared into the falling snow. I looked down at the old journal in my hands. Slowly, I opened the cover. On the very first page, written in faded ink, was my mother's name. and directly beneath it was mine. For a long moment I could only stare at the page. My mother's name. Then mine. Written years before I had ever become a mother. The ink had faded, but the letters were still easy to read. Have you ever opened something expecting answers, only to find an even bigger mystery? That was exactly how I felt. I quickly closed the journal. Mother's footsteps were coming down the stairs. I slipped the book beneath the folded baby quilts inside the cupboard. Just as I shut the door, she entered the kitchen. Samuel had started crying again. Mother smiled. "He has strong lungs." I forced a smile back. "I think he gets that from Daniel." She laughed softly. For a few moments, everything felt normal again. She warmed oatmeal while I fed Samuel. The smell of cinnamon filled the room. Outside, snow continued falling over the fields. If someone had looked through our window, they would have seen an ordinary Amish family. No one would have guessed I was hiding a journal that already knew my name. After breakfast, Daniel left to help his father repair a broken fence. Mother gathered the laundry. "I'll be outside. If Samuel sleeps, you should rest." "I will." The moment the back door closed, I hurried to the cupboard. My hands trembled as I pulled the journal free. The leather cover felt rough from years of use. Someone had opened it hundreds of times, maybe thousands. I whispered a small prayer. Then I opened it again. The first pages listed names. Women from different church districts. Their ages. The dates their babies were born. Nothing unusual. Then I noticed another column. It wasn't labeled, only small marks. Some names had a circle. Others had a cross. Some had nothing at all. I didn't understand what any of it meant. I kept turning pages. Each page carried another list, another group of mothers, another group of babies. Then I reached my mother's page. My heart started racing. Her name was there. Beside it, someone had written, "First child, week after delivery. Family insisted she continue the 40 days despite fever." I read the sentence again. Despite fever. Mother had never told me that. The next line stopped me cold. She wanted to remove the linen on the 7th day. Her mother refused. I couldn't believe it. My own grandmother, the woman who always comforted everyone, had she forced Mother to continue? I kept reading. Recovered, slowly. Began believing the tradition was required by God. I closed my eyes. That last sentence echoed inside my mind. Not because God required it, because she had come to believe it. There was a difference, a very important difference. I turned another page. Then I found my own name, Regina, age 24, first child, Samuel. The next line wasn't written by the same person. The ink looked newer. The handwriting was different. It said, "Watch carefully." That was all. Just 2 words. Watch carefully. My stomach tightened. Watch for what? Someone had written that before Naomi brought me the journal. Who and why? I heard the back door open. I quickly closed the journal and hid it beneath my apron. Mother came inside carrying a basket of wet clothes. "You didn't rest." "I wasn't sleepy." She smiled. "You've always been curious." The words caught my attention. Curious. Almost everyone had used that word about me growing up. Not stubborn, not rebellious, curious. Maybe curiosity wasn't the problem. Maybe it simply made other people uncomfortable. That afternoon, several women came to help with quilting. It was another Amish custom after a birth. They stitched while talking quietly about gardens, weather, and children. Samuel slept peacefully nearby. I noticed something strange. Every woman looked at the linen around my wrist. Some smiled, some nodded. One older woman actually counted the days on her fingers, as if she were checking my progress. No one asked how I felt, only whether I was keeping the tradition. I couldn't stop thinking about the journal. Finally, I asked a simple question. Does anyone know how this custom began? The room became silent. Needles stopped moving. One woman cleared her throat. Another adjusted her prayer covering. Sarah finally answered. It has always been done. But how did it begin? She smiled politely. Long before us. Someone must have started it. Another silence. I looked around the room. Every woman seemed uncomfortable. Yet none of them looked surprised by my question, almost as though they had asked it themselves years earlier, only they had stopped asking. After the women left, I walked to the barn. Daniel was brushing one of the horses. Samuel slept against my shoulder. I watched Daniel for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" He smiled. "You usually do." "When your mother had your youngest sister, did she stay home for 40 days? He nodded. "Yes." "Did anyone ever explain why?" He frowned. "No." "Then why does everyone protect this tradition so fiercely?" He leaned against the stall door. "I don't know. But I remember something." "What?" I was maybe 12. I heard Father arguing with Bishop Eli. That surprised me. Arguments between Amish men were rarely spoken about. What were they arguing over? Daniel thought for a moment. I only heard one sentence. "What sentence?" He looked at me. Father said, "If people learn where it came from, they'll stop following it." A cold feeling spread through my chest. Where it came from. Not why God wanted it. Where it came from. Those were completely different things. Before I could ask another question, Daniel shook his head. I never understood what they meant. Neither did I. But now I wanted to know more than ever. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I lit a small oil lamp. Samuel slept beside me. The farmhouse was completely quiet. I opened the journal again. Near the back, several pages had been folded together, as though someone wanted to hide them. Carefully, I unfolded the first page. Across the top, in larger writing than anywhere else, were the words, "Private notes, never read during church visits." My heart pounded. Below that was a dated entry from more than 30 years earlier. It read, "Today Bishop Eli's father asked us to continue the 40-day custom." Several mothers questioned whether it was truly part of our faith. He said questioning would only create division. So the questions were buried instead. I stopped breathing for a moment. Buried. Not answered. Buried. I turned the page. The next entry was shorter, only one sentence, but it changed everything I believed. There is no scripture requiring the linen, the isolation, or the 40 days. This was never God's command. At that exact moment, I heard someone outside my bedroom window, not walking, listening. Then came 3 slow knocks on the glass. I carefully pulled back the curtain. Standing in the darkness, holding a lantern beneath his coat, was Bishop Eli himself, and in his hand, he was holding another journal. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Bishop Eli stood outside my window without moving. The lantern under his coat gave off just enough light for me to see his face. He wasn't angry. He looked tired. Very tired. Have you ever expected someone to come with punishment, only to find sadness instead? That was the first surprise of that night. I carefully laid Samuel back into his cradle. He never woke. I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and slipped quietly out the back door. The snow crunched beneath my shoes. The cold air stung my cheeks. Bishop Eli waited beside the old maple tree. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he held up the journal in his hand. "I believe you already have its companion." I tightened my grip around my shawl. "Naomi brought it." He nodded. "I thought she might." I expected him to demand the journal back. He didn't. Instead, he asked, "Have you read it?" I answered honestly, "Yes." "And now you have questions." "I do." He looked toward the dark fields. "So did I." That answer caught me completely off guard. "You?" He gave a slow nod. "I was younger than you are now." I asked my father where the tradition came from. His father had been the bishop before him. What did he say? He told me some traditions hold communities together, even if no one remembers why they began. I looked at him carefully. Did you believe him? For many years, he looked down at the second journal, until I found this. He handed it to me. The leather cover looked older than Naomi's journal. The corners were badly worn, almost falling apart. This belonged to my father. You want me to read it? I want you to understand it. We stepped into the small woods behind our farmhouse where the wind was quieter. He lit the lantern. Its warm light fell across the pages. The first entry was written almost 50 years earlier. Several mothers have become frightened by the 40-day custom. Some believe they are unclean. Others believe God is punishing them. That was never its purpose. I looked up. If that wasn't its purpose, what was? Bishop Eli sighed deeply. In the beginning, it wasn't about shame. It was supposed to protect mothers. I frowned. I don't understand. Long ago, many young wives returned to heavy farm work only days after giving birth. They became seriously ill. Some died. I stared at him. So the 40 days were meant to force families to let mothers rest. He nodded. Yes. I felt confused. Then why does everyone treat it like a test of obedience? His eyes filled with regret. Because over generations, people remembered the rule and forgot the reason. Neither of us spoke. The words settled heavily between us. Something meant to protect women had become something women feared. I thought about Sarah, about mother, about grandmother. Every one of them had followed it. None of them had ever explained it. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe no one had explained it to them either. I looked back at the journal. Another page had been marked with a piece of cloth. I carefully turned to it. The entry was written by Bishop Eli's father. Several ministers suggested teaching the true history during church instruction. Others worried people would reject every old custom if they learned this one had changed. The discussion ended without agreement. So nothing changed. I whispered the words more to myself than to him. Bishop Eli slowly shook his head. No. It became easier to repeat the tradition than to explain it. A tear slipped down my cheek, not because I was angry, because I suddenly understood how easily good intentions could become heavy burdens. I thought of Naomi. She had buried 3 babies, not because of the linen, but because she believed every loss meant she had failed God. No mother should ever carry that weight. I closed both journals. What happens now? Bishop Eli smiled sadly. I've asked myself that for 2 years. Why tell me? Because you ask questions, and because Naomi believed you would. He looked directly into my eyes. Our young mothers deserve better than silence. The next Sunday, our church gathered in the large barn for worship. Families arrived one buggy at a time. Men sat on one side, women on the other. Everything appeared ordinary. No one knew what had happened the night before. After the hymns ended, Bishop Eli stood. Instead of opening his sermon, he held up the old journal. The room became quiet. I want to speak about one of our customs. People exchanged confused looks. That almost never happened. He continued. For many years, we have remembered a practice, but forgotten why it began. He explained everything, the history, the purpose, the mistakes, the fear that had slowly replaced compassion. No one interrupted him. Some people cried quietly. Others stared at the floor. I looked toward Mother. Tears were running down her face. After the service ended, she found me outside. I didn't know. She held my hands tightly. I truly believed God expected all of it. I know. She shook her head. I wish someone had told me before you were born. I hugged her. For the first time since Samuel came into the world, I felt like we were simply mother and daughter, not 2 women carrying the same unanswered questions. A few weeks later, the women's gathering met again. The wooden box sat on the table. Sarah looked at it for a long time. Then she quietly removed the white linen. She folded it one last time, placed it inside, closed the lid. We'll keep the box. She smiled gently. So our daughters remember the history. But we will never again tell them that God asked for something he never asked for. No one objected. Naomi smiled through tears. Mother reached for my hand. Even Sarah looked relieved. Sometimes healing doesn't come from creating something new. Sometimes it begins by telling the truth about something old. Samuel is 12 now. He's taller every season. He still loves running through the cornfields after chores are finished. And 2 years after Samuel, God blessed us with a little girl. When she was born, the women came with soup, quilts, fresh bread, and warm hugs. They helped me rest. They cared for the baby. They cared for me. No one tied linen around my wrist. No one told me to prove my obedience. Instead, Sarah kissed my forehead and said something I pray every new Amish mother will hear. Rest, because your body deserves kindness, not because fear tells you to. I still think about that snowy morning when Naomi stood at my door holding an old journal. If she had stayed silent, I probably would have done exactly what every woman before me had done. And someday, I might have passed the same fear to my own daughter. Instead, she inherited something much better: the truth.